Hi everyone, welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast. Last week's episode was all about giving the gift of understanding this holiday season. If you haven't listened, I'd love you to go back and listen now, where I do a deep dive into celebrating it's okay to be different. And Christmas, New Year, holiday celebrations, every family does things differently, and it's a great opportunity to talk about those traditions. I also said I've got a fantastic new newsletter called Give the Gift of Understanding this holiday season, with lots of tips and strategies in it to make a difference to you and the kids you know. So please, if you haven't already, go back. It's got 14 tips for Christmas and holiday season. Go back and download the newsletter. It's got promoting understanding, using picture books to educate the whole family, sharing diagnosis, why, when, and how to tell my child, holiday reading, using cooking to teach, teaching diversity through food, 6 key strategies for creating a calm area at school and home, 12 essential tips for concerts at the end of your celebration, plus parents some tips for when you visit family and friends, stocking filling ideas, my favorite sensory tools, plus timers. And I would love you to give the gift of visual time. To me, timers are vital for helping children. Time management is anxiety management. Those of you who have been to my workshops, I'll say it's the number one accommodation we need to make at home and school. Too many schools still have an analog clock, and it's not accessible for students. It's the best adjustment, the most important adjustment. Can you imagine if you're used to looking at a digital clock on your phone and you have no concept of how long you have to sit somewhere, push through, do things? Anyway, if you don't have a time timer, I highly recommend you have a look in the newsletter at the new time timers. They are amazing. And if any of you are going, no, my child gets stressed around time, I know, but it's an important skill. So I've put in some strategies around minimizing stress around timers too. So I highly recommend, if you haven't already, download the newsletter. It's 30 pages of tips and strategies and ideas. And I don't know, I always like a little magazine. I highly recommend you download it on your iPad. And I've got it on my iPad here, and it looks so nice with lots of ideas to make a difference to you and the kids you know. But today, I want to do a bit of a deeper dive using some of the things that are in that newsletter. And it's about the importance of role models with a lived experience for you and the kids you know. Now, this year I have done quite a few podcasts where I've talked about people like Temple Grandin and people with a lived experience, being my mentors. I truly believe we need to find mentors for our young people. And I have found over the years that helping them connect, now online or face-to-face, with mentors. So, for example, Yellow Ladybugs for young girls and women on the spectrum. Brilliant group out of Melbourne. They run catch-ups. They have a fantastic Facebook page where lots of people share about their own life and diagnostic journey, about how hard it is as parents, but also lots of celebrations of diversity and difference. So I highly recommend Yellow Ladybugs. I also love the I Can Network, and they have lots of young mentors that can go out to schools or can meet online. The I Can Network is brilliant. But of course, I've interviewed a lot of people on my podcasts too, and I would highly recommend you go back and listen to some of those podcasts. I've had Dean Beadle, Chris Bonio, Yen Perkis, Robin Stewart, and even though some of those podcast topics might sound like they're like Robin's talking about periods, just listening to her talk about puberty and periods and like the way she took the photos, looking at the world through her lens is so powerful. So I will refer to all those podcast episodes in the notes, and I'm going to go back to them in a minute. But I just wanted to really encourage you this summer to read a book by an autistic author, to maybe watch a movie like The Temple Grandin. Make sure you have your tissues out. Best movie. I rewatch it. We'll be rewatching it over summer as a family. It's just called Temple Grandin. Look in the catalogue or the newsletter. You'll see it in there. But what about some of the beautiful picture books in the newsletter, like Inside Asperger's, Looking Out, All Cats Are on the Autism Spectrum, All Dogs Have ADHD, My Friend with Autism, All Birds Have Anxiety, I Am Aspie Girl. How about putting those in your stocking fillers? I mean, there are so many great books which give us insights and understanding. And for me, that is just the most important thing, that embrace difference to make a difference, but also reading the books, reflecting on how it would feel if you had autism spectrum, how you can be more supportive. I mean, children can only be supportive if they understand. And I know some of you have heard me say this before, but, my son's friend Liam had nut allergy or has nut allergies. He's still friends. They've been friends since year 3. Now, when Liam was younger, when he would come over, I would lay out all the food that we were going to have on the bench and get his mum to check that there was nothing there he was allergic to. She'd hand over the EpiPen. We'd do all these things to check in. As Liam got older, he'd have his EpiPen in his bag. The boys all knew that he was allergic to nuts. He would be able to check what we're eating and advocate. And he actually became able to advocate for himself. And this is what I aim for, that our young people can advocate for themselves, which is why in the newsletter I've got, why should I tell my child? And this is about sharing diagnosis. Why should you tell your child? And if you listen to the podcast with Dean Beadle, which is episode 75, he discusses how his autistic identity and the importance of embracing that, and also the challenges and how it's been a long journey for him to actually celebrate his differences. And Chris Bonillo said his podcast, how embracing his autistic strength changed his life. These are that's episode 81, such important podcasts to listen to. So I highly recommend that if you listen to those podcasts, then think about, imagine if all children understood their own autistic identity from a younger age, but also others. How can they be supportive if they don't understand? My son understands Liam has nut allergies, so he can be a supportive friend. As they've matured and become teenagers, they're able to support each other. And James can go, oh, hang on, Liam, can we go there? Is that somewhere you can eat? They all have to work together and collaborate to make a difference. So I believe it takes a community to raise a child on the spectrum. And what I mean by that is the child, their family, their peers. I mean, it is heartbreaking for me. And just last week, I had a workshop where it was a group of teacher aides, and I asked them, how many birthday parties or social events do you think the students have been invited to this year? Now, they're in a country town in South Australia. They haven't had any lockdowns. How many birthday parties or activities? And they all said 0. Inclusion is still finishing at the school gate. And that upsets me because my doctorate research that I did like 20 years ago found the missing link in inclusion is actually educating the community, helping other people understand autism spectrum. You've heard me say I'm over autism awareness, I'm over autism acceptance. We are aware, we accept. I want advocacy for the child and for others. And I want other children to say, hey, why don't we invite so-and-so to that play date? Why don't we invite that family to the park? Because many of my families aren't included. And I am sorry if you're a family listening and you've experienced this. It is horrible. Can you hear me? I get so upset because I know when we actually tell the other children and we give them the tools of understanding, the peers are amazing. I don't think we give the peers enough credit, which is what my doctorate found. But the group who can be tricky are other parents. And it always upsets me to see how other parents often exclude children on the spectrum because they see the behaviour or unsure or uncomfortable. And that is so unfair. Anyway, I'll let my high horse run away. Back to talking positive, happy things. So, just as always, a reminder that there is a lot of debate around person first language or identity first language. And you will hear on the podcast that each of my guests actually identifies differently, calling themselves autistic person or person with autism. And I believe we should respect each person's their self-advocacy for what they're comfortable with. So I always ask the person what language they want me to use to identify them, whether they want to be person first or person first language or identity first language. I always check in just like I check he, she, they, them. I'm very conscious of those things. And I know some of you have heard me say this before, but it's just like my birth name's Susan, and I don't like to be called Susan. I like to be called Sue. So I think when people call me Susan, I get a bit affronted because I said, call me Sue. So this is where we need the children to advocate. I've got kids who want to be called neurodiverse, Asperger's, child with Asperger's, autistic child. It is a personal preference. And I think if we all just ask whatever people want to be called, go with that and accept each person's individual choices. I think that's so important. So anyway, the episodes I'm going to recommend is Everything You Need to Know About Periods, where Robin Stewart discusses periods and how she took photos. And any of you going, but, I'm with a boy. Boys need to know about periods too. And we talk about this because we've had many boys over the years who go up to a girl and go, oh, what's going on? Or they don't understand the language. Both sexes need to understand what a period is. It's not just that girls have to understand. Have a think. It's very important. If the boys can end up having a girlfriend, they need to know about periods. So really good episode to listen to, whether you have a boy or a girl. And teachers, it's a really good episode to listen to think about how we educate around periods, relationships, how important it is to teach about relationships and healthy understanding of change in our body. So it's a brilliant, brilliant episode. And then Yen Perkis discusses the wonderful world of work. And Yen is such a strong advocate for people with autism spectrum, but also with disability, having a fantastic work and job. And she wrote my favorite workbook called The Wonderful World of Work, the orange one on my website. And I love it because it's a lived experience of getting a job and the steps you need to take. So if any of you have kids who are 15 or over, great episode to listen to. Now's the time to start getting them jobs over the summer, getting them out volunteering, going with family friends to work. And she recommends not a whole day, just go for a few hours, really get a concept of work. Some of them have no idea when you say you're going to work. They have no picture what that looks like. So going in sort of like old-fashioned work experience, but maybe just like a little drop in for a couple of hours, visit someone, have a look around, give a concept of what work is. And I also love, if you want to watch some TV series over these holidays, Employable Me on iView on the ABC was fabulous. I had many young people on the spectrum who were looking for jobs, and some of them working 8 hours is really hard. So this is why Yen's about slowly building up, visiting, going, having a look. So have a listen to that podcast, really interesting podcast. And then the wonderful Dean Beadle, who many of you in Australia and New Zealand have heard me talk with Dean. And Dean is just amazing. And this podcast, he actually talks about so many things, but also finding out about having autism spectrum, why he doesn't like the word label, and why we should call it a diagnosis. He also talks about how he's reclaiming the word disability, which is so interesting, and also the negative narrative that surrounds autism and how to positively reframe it. And how to make children the solution to the behaviour rather than blaming them, and the massive impact on anxiety. So I highly recommend you have listened to that fabulous episode with Dean. And the other one is episode 81. So the Dean Beadle one's episode 75. Episode 81 is how Embracing His Autistic Strengths Changed His Life, which is an interview with Chris Bonillo. I always say his surname differently every time. Bear with me on that. But Chris, on that page, also Chris, on the podcast page, one of my favorite things Chris did is he wrote a letter sort of to himself and other young autistic people about how, the teen years are really tough and you'll get through it. And he writes some amazing blogs and podcasts, but I love it. His website and Facebook page is called Autistic Not Weird. And he actually did teaching. He offers a lot of insights into so many things. That is a brilliant podcast. And I love that Embracing His Autistic Strengths, because I'm all about embracing difference to make a difference. So that is another wonderful podcast I would recommend that you have a listen to. Now, if you would prefer to read a book, in the newsletter, there are some fabulous books that I highly recommend that you put on your summer reading, or teachers, if you have going to give a present to a teacher, or maybe a teacher who's going to have your student next year, giving them like Thinking in Pictures by Temple Grandin, or giving them one of Jan Perker's books, or giving them, I'm just looking here, giving your teens books like the Aspie Teen Survival Guide, the Asperger's Teens Toolkit, the Aspie Kids Secret Book of Social Rules, or Freaks, Geeks and Asperger's. There's so many fabulous books you could give the teens themselves. Or Temple Grandin, we have The Way I See It, which if you have a child with limited communication, I highly recommend that one. Thinking in Pictures, Different Not Less, which is fabulous, and parents, the must-read called The Loving Push. And it is about those of you who did the free Temple Grandin webinar this year, back in July. I think I had that available, that sort of leads on to Temple Grandin course. It's about how to extend and how to do that loving push, and the whole book is about that. And in the Temple Grandin course, actually, I've got a whole lesson on using that book, The Loving Push, the key tips and how important they are. So while I'm thinking about that, it is December. Can you believe it? So every year in December, I run a summer school, and normally summer school is just myself and Dr. Tony Atwood, the 2 courses, and we have them on a really super sale, like $319 for the 2. So it's a massive saving. But this year, I just felt like, well, a lot of you have done my course, a lot of you have done Tony's course, and some of you haven't done any and looking for something different. So yeah, my course and Tony's is normally $419, and it's going to be $319. That's $100 off. So if you're looking to do some learning this summer, I do these big sales. And the reason I do it is I am passionate that over summer is the most fantastic time, or if you're in somewhere else in the world, over winter. This is a great time when you've got a bit of downtime to actually learn and to actually do a bit of professional development to prepare for next year, to prepare for the students or parents, to give you a little bit of knowledge and understanding to support your child next year. If you've got a child transitioning to primary to secondary, maybe you need to watch the Tony Atwood course and I see Tony speak all the time and redo the course. There's so many little gems to take away, or you might go and do my course. But so what we're doing for summer school this year, you can do Tony and my courses. So I always say Tony's a psychologist, so he tells you what is autism. I tell you what to do because I'm a teacher. Or Temple Grandin myself, which is the lived experience, and then my classroom experience, which I do believe the Temple Grandin course is probably one of my best courses. I mean, interviewing Temple, having her lived experience, and so Temple gives her insights and understanding, and then I tell you how to apply that to the classroom. It's just nothing like I have ever offered as far as a face-to-face course or an online course. It's all new content, and it's really building on Temple's lived experience. So you can do those 2 courses together, or you can do my early childhood course and my course, which are a great combo too. And if you're in New South Wales or in ACT, that will actually be 10 hours of accredited learning. Unfortunately, because of NESA's changes, NESA, it will be 10 hours accredited training, and TQI. Sorry, going off on a little tangent here, but it's probably important you understand. But if you are in New South Wales, the Tony Atwood course and Temple Grandin, you'll have to do a self-selected professional learning. They're not accredited at this stage. So any of you who know, they've had lots of changes. But anyway, have a look on the website. Make sure you have a look. But if you're looking for some accredited training, some of my courses are and some aren't. But anyway, whether you're looking for accredited training or not, I believe summer is a great time to do some learning, because I believe we would not send a miner down a mine with no knowledge of safety and understanding what to do. But so often we give teachers children with autism spectrum and neurodiversity with no prior skills or knowledge. Most teachers at uni just did what is autism. They didn't do all the complexity of behavior and trauma and neurodiversity and knowing about the 3 stages of a meltdown like I talked through, or understanding how to accommodate and adjust, and often in busy and complex classrooms. So this is the perfect time. If you're going, but Sue, I haven't got the child, isn't it better you have the training in advance? Like first aid, we don't wait till a child has a bee sting. We learn about it in advance. We learn about CPR before there's an incident. So I'm a big fan that if you're getting a student on the spectrum, go to your principal and go, can I do a Sue Lucky summer school course over the summer holidays to be ready? And in fact, a couple of years ago, we did do the early childhood course with my course as a summer school. And a preschool teacher, director contacted me and said her staff absolutely binge watched it, and they were all so sad it was over, but they couldn't wait to get back to work to implement the strategies. And every year now she re-enrolls any new staff in those courses because she knows how important that has been in helping staff feel confident. I mean, if you haven't worked with children with autism who are nonverbal, you want to give the best to that child. If you haven't had the training, it's so unfair. Anyway, I'll let my high horse run away, but make sure you check out the summer school. Lots of great courses, but also, drum roll, in Teacher Assistant Appreciation Week this year, I launched a new course with Dean Beadle, and it is fantastic. If any of you have heard Dean speak, he is hilarious. Not only is it a funny course, it is so informative and got so many great tips and strategies, and it's like nothing. I can't even explain how special this course is. But what Dean has done, I'm just looking, sorry, I can't remember if it's a 2 or 3 hour course and what you'll get. But anyway, have a look on my website. I'm trying to Google. I am so funny. Sometimes I make myself laugh how I try and Google while I'm talking. I don't know about you, but that is not my strength. I get distracted. So with the Dean Beadle course, it's a 2-hour course. I've just looked it up. It's understanding and meeting the needs of neurodiverse students. Now, originally we had it as for people who had done part 1 of my teacher assistant course, and you could do Dean as part 2, okay? However, it's been so popular and so many people said, can I just do Dean? So what we're going to do over summer is open it up. It'll just be $49. So it's a super special. It's going to be available for a week. And teachers, you'll get a 2-hour certificate. If you're interested, teacher assistants, if you've done part 1, I highly recommend you think about doing the part 2 Dean Beadle. But anyone who is interested listen to his podcast. If you enjoy his podcast, I highly recommend, for a bit of a fun professional development this summer and so informative, do the lived experience with Dean Beadle. But if you want to do more like a 5-hour course, then I would look at the Temple Grandin and myself. Okay, gosh, I have gone on. I hope I haven't gone on to, oh no, it's all good. Sorry, I thought I'd been talking off topic for a little while there. So, these holidays then, what I'm asking you to do is to think about reading a lived experience, watching a movie, watching a show like Love on the Spectrum, Employable Me, having a look on Facebook and maybe following some groups like the ICANN Network, Yellow Ladybugs, Autistic Not Weird. Follow Dean Beadle's page. It's fabulous. Really be conscious. I'm asking you to be more conscious about bringing into your world the lived experience of people who are mentors and advocates who can make a difference to you and the kids you know. And parents, I'm asking you to embrace your child's difference, to think about telling them about their diagnosis if they don't know about it. And if they do know about it, look at creating some autism mentors for them, looking at some of the pages I've talked about, or buying some books or watching some movies, and really looking at how can we use the lived experience to build our knowledge and understanding, but also help young people build a strong autistic identity, to be our future Dean Beadles, to be our future Yen Perkis, Temple Grandin, for them to have their own journey and understanding of autism. However, I don't want them to have many of the struggles that Chris and Yen and Temple had. You know, they all faced terrible bullying and teasing and feeling isolated and rejected. I want this generation to have a different experience of autism spectrum, and I believe they can look to their mentors, their people with a lived experience, what worked and didn't work for them, to listen to these strong advocates and use their strong advocates as their mentors. I use them as my mentors. I read every book. I read blogs. I read Yen Perkis' blog every week, and I always get insights and understanding. I follow ICANN Network on my Facebook, and Yellow Ladybugs and Autistic Not Weird and Dean Beadle and Robin Stewart. All of these people add to the rich tapestry of understanding neurodiversity and how different autism spectrum can look. As I always say, to know someone with autism is not to know autism. This is why it's important you find a range of autistic mentors. It's why you need to find a range of lived experience to build on your own knowledge and experience. So if nothing else, jump on social media and follow a few people with a lived experience. I would love you to join summer school. So many great ways to learn this summer. And I think summer is a fabulous time to sit, how much Netflix and Stan and all those binge watching can you watch without feeling like you've wasted a day? But I promise you, if you do one of the Tony Atwood, Temple Grandin, Dean Beadle, my courses, you're actually going to feel better at the end of the day. You're going to be, wow, I have learned so much. This is going to be so good. And you're going to feel armed with tools and understanding to make a difference to the students that you know. Hope you can join me for summer school. Please do not forget to download the newsletter, and don't forget to create a calm area for my kids and be strategic about concerts, of end of year celebrations, about helping our students make these enjoyable. And there's some top tips there to ensure that all of your students get to enjoy those end of year activities, which should be wonderful, but can be a little bit sensorily overwhelming for many of my students. So I hope that you've got some good ideas to make a difference to you and the kids you know. I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Atwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.sulaki.com.au.